being alive isn't bad at all. That's how one of the most ruthless and unsettling books ever written about the human condition begins: The Conspiracy Against the Human Race. Its author is Thomas Ligotti, an American writer known for his horror stories and for a style that fuses literature with philosophy. But that sentence should not be taken literally. In the original, Ligotti writes, "Being alive is all right," an expression that sounds more like "being alive is okay, it's fine," as if life were, after all, acceptable. Yet the intention is ironic, because immediately after he overturns that apparent normality and reveals his radical vision, being alive is anything but all right. To live is to be trapped in suffering, pain, aging, and death. In this philosophical essay, Ligotti dares to say out loud that life is, at its core, a trap, and that human existence rests on a massive conspiracy of silence. According to him, anyone truly honest with themselves must admit that life mainly means suffering. Happiness is nothing more than a brief truce, a pause between two pains, and in order not to lose their minds, human beings must pretend. They pretend that life is more or less acceptable. They pretend existence is worth it. We carry on. And indeed, how often, when faced with the classic question, "Hi, how are you? How's it going?" the answer is exactly that. We carry on. A formula that seems harmless, but reveals the struggle of simply being in the world, or rather, in this world. This is how Ligotti frames the conspiracy: a collective lie that prevents us from staring the truth in the face. And he puts it in a few sharp words. Life is malignantly useless. Not just useless, but malignantly so, because it tricks us into believing it has meaning, forcing us to chase goals, ideals, achievements, while all that truly awaits is decay and nothingness. Think about it. Before humans developed consciousness, life was like that of any other animal: being born, surviving, reproducing, and dying. But with consciousness came the thought of death, the perception of universal suffering, the anguish of passing time, and the awareness that everything ends. This excess of clarity is what Ligotti calls the parent of all horrors. The paradox at the black heart of his work is that consciousness is the real mistake of evolution. A mistake that shattered our harmony with nature and made man the only animal forced to contemplate his own doom. A creature that cannot live without consciousness, but that precisely because of consciousness cannot live in peace. So what can be done? How can this harsh truth be endured? How does the human species keep from going insane if consciousness really is a sentence? This is where Peter Wessel Zapffe comes in, the Norwegian philosopher whom Ligotti considers the clearest voice of modern pessimism. Zapffe argued that in order not to collapse under the weight of clarity, humans invented 4 strategies: to lock away their darkest thoughts, to cling to absolute values, to fill life with distractions, and to turn horror into art. These mechanisms are the pillars of our silent conspiracy. And if we look at today's world, their presence is everywhere. Frantic work, social media devouring our attention, values packaged like consumer goods, and an entire entertainment industry designed to numb thought. Without these defenses, consciousness would show us what we truly are: meat rotting on bones that are falling apart. And then Ligotti digs even deeper. The self is a puppet that believes it moves on its own. He claims we think we have an I, that we are masters of our destiny, but in reality we are just biological automatons with a built-in program to survive and reproduce, always inside an illusion. Because without it, we simply could not go on. The book is ruthless precisely because it leaves no way out. It strips away every support. Religions, Ligotti says, are nothing but fables to calm human beings. Political ideologies promise future and progress, but only serve to keep the mind occupied. Art and philosophy, even the most pessimistic, always end up being an anesthetic, an elegant way to distract ourselves. Everything functions to keep alive the great collective lie that life is all right. But if we put aside these illusions, what remains? What remains is something so profound it can hardly be admitted. Life has no meaning. It is a chain of suffering that perpetuates itself from generation to generation. We are born without asking for it. We suffer in order to stay alive. We die without escape and without choosing it. And in the meantime, we generate other beings who will repeat the same mocking fate. It is a blind and cruel cycle, sustained only by our fear of looking at it and analyzing it with intelligence. Ligotti is relentless. He drives the blade all the way in. For him, if we were truly honest with ourselves, we would have to admit that the only ethical act would be to stop reproducing, to break the chain and allow the human race to die out. Not as an act of hatred, but of compassion and respect. No one else should be forced to live under this sentence. This is the most scandalous point of the book, but also the most coherent one. If consciousness really is the parent of all horrors, then why continue to bring new children into this inheritance? Ligotti even imagines an almost utopian scenario, a humanity that, within a few generations, peacefully goes extinct. No wars, no catastrophes, but a lucid choice, marked by bright smiles among people who decide not to condemn anyone else to life. It is a paradoxical image because the darkest truth becomes at the same time the most compassionate act. And yet, immediately after, Ligotti reminds us that this is only an illusion, an impossible fantasy. The deluded will always be with us, and the machinery of life will keep on turning. His diagnosis leaves no room for optimism. The human being is an unsolvable paradox. He cannot live without consciousness, but he cannot bear its weight. He cannot live without lies, yet those same lies torment him. He is not an animal, not a god, not free. He is a creature broken by an excess of clarity. The conspiracy is already within us, the necessity of pretending that life has meaning, of hiding the void behind words, symbols, beliefs. For him, it is a necessary conspiracy. Without it, the weight of consciousness would crush us. But it is also a vile conspiracy, because it condemns us to live in lies, to perpetuate the cycle, to suffer without reason. In the end, what remains for him is this: we live only by lying to ourselves because the truth would break us. So, what can be done in the face of these words? As always, there is no definitive answer. Some choose to forget, to return to distraction, to fill themselves with illusions, and this is what most people do. Others choose to face the truth and to live knowing that every step is without purpose, as an act of pure rebellion. Perhaps the most authentic challenge is not to hope, not to pray, but to look reality in the face without useless illusions. To see the mechanisms that numb us, to see the collective fables that hold everything together, to see the void without turning away. None of this serves to save us, but it probably restores dignity to the weight of consciousness, without dressing it up as a fable.